The first time I saw my name crossed out in red ink, I thought it was a mistake. My name is Linda Peter and I am 28 years old. 5 years ago I was Linda Hartwell, daughter of textile magnate Robert Hartwell, heir to a fortune built over 3 generations. Today I am the woman who owns everything my family tried to steal from me. But let me start from the beginning. I was studying fashion design in Paris when the call came. 3 in the morning, French time. My mother's voice, strange and distant, telling me that father was gone. Heart attack. Sudden. The funeral was in 2 days. I caught the first flight back to New York, my mind numb with grief. Father and I had been close despite the distance. He called me every week, sent care packages filled with my favorite chocolates, wired money without me even asking. He was proud of my work in Paris, excited about my plans to start my own fashion house. "You have the vision, Linda," he used to say. "The creativity and the business sense. You'll do great things." I never imagined I'd be doing them without his support. The funeral was everything you'd expect from a Hartwell family event. Expensive flowers, designer suits, people crying tears that dried up the moment they left the cemetery. I stood between my mother Margaret and my older brother David, feeling like a stranger in my own family. David was 31 then, already working in the family business for 8 years. He had father's height and commanding presence, but none of his warmth. Where father built relationships, David demanded respect. Where father inspired loyalty, David bought it. Mother was 54, still beautiful in that cold, untouchable way that made people afraid to get too close. She'd married father when she was 22, and I'd never seen any real affection between them. They were partners in the business of being wealthy, nothing more. After the funeral, the lawyer called us to his office for the reading of the will. I sat in the leather chair across from Mr. Peterson's massive desk, expecting to hear about trust funds and business shares and the house in the Hamptons. What I heard instead changed everything. The bulk of Robert Hartwell's estate, including his shares in Hartwell Textiles, goes to his son David, Mr. Peterson read. To his wife Margaret, the house in Manhattan and a monthly allowance of $50,000. To his daughter Linda. He paused, looking uncomfortable. To his daughter Linda, he leaves his personal effects and a trust fund of $100,000. $100,000. Out of a fortune worth over $50 million. I stared at the lawyer, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" $100,000, he said again, not meeting my eyes. "That's impossible. Father promised me shares in the company. He said I'd inherit equally with David." David shifted in his chair but said nothing. Mother examined her manicured nails. "I'm afraid the will is quite clear," Mr. Peterson said. "Your father must have changed his mind about the inheritance distribution." I looked at my brother, my mother, searching their faces for some sign of surprise or outrage on my behalf. Instead, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Relief. Satisfaction. They weren't shocked by this news. They had known it was coming. "I need to see the will," I said quietly. Mr. Peterson hesitated, glancing at David. "Of course. It's your right." He handed me the document and I read through it with growing horror. The language was formal, legal, final. But something felt wrong. The signature looked like father's, but the handwriting in the margins was different. Shakier. "When was this will written?" I asked. 3 months ago. Your father came in personally to make these changes. 3 months ago, father had been in the hospital with pneumonia. He'd been weak, barely able to hold a conversation. But he'd been recovering, getting stronger. I'd spoken to him just 2 weeks before his death, and he'd been excited about my upcoming graduation from design school. "He was sick 3 months ago," I said. "Barely conscious half the time." "Linda," Mother said sharply, "don't make accusations you can't prove." "I'm not making accusations. I'm asking questions." "The will is legal and binding," David said, speaking for the first time. "Father made his wishes clear." "Did he? Or did you help him make them clear?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. David's face went hard, the mask of fake grief slipping away. "Careful, sister. Grief makes people say things they regret." "Does it? Or does greed make people do things they should regret?" I stood up, still holding the will. I want a copy of this. And I want to see the previous version. There is no previous version, Mr. Peterson said quickly. This is the most recent will on file. Impossible. Father updated his will every year. He told me so himself. Perhaps your father told you many things, Mother said coldly. That doesn't make them true. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman who'd raised me, who'd braided my hair and helped with homework and taught me to walk in high heels, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could look her own daughter in the eye and lie without flinching. You did this, I whispered. Both of you. We did nothing, David said. Father made his choice. Father would never cut me out of the inheritance. He loved me. Did he? Or did he just feel sorry for you? The words hit me like a physical blow. What's that supposed to mean? David stood up, adjusting his expensive suit. You're not really a Hartwell, Linda. You're adopted. Father felt guilty about it, so he spoiled you. But when it came time to make the hard decisions about the family legacy, he chose blood over sentiment. The world tilted sideways. Adopted. The word echoed in my head like a scream. That's not true. Ask her, David said, nodding toward Mother. Ask the woman who's been lying to you for 23 years. I turned to Mother, desperate for her to deny it, to tell David he was crazy or cruel or both. Instead, she just looked tired. We wanted to tell you, she said quietly. But Robert thought it would be easier if you never knew. Never knew what? That you're not our biological daughter. We adopted you when you were a baby. Your birth mother was a teenage girl who couldn't take care of you. The room spun around me. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, about my place in the world, crumbled to dust. So Father left me nothing because I'm not really his daughter? He left you what he thought was appropriate, David said. A trust fund to help you start your own life. Away from the family business. Away from the family, you mean? If that's how you want to see it. I looked at the will again, at the signature that looked like Father's but felt all wrong. He didn't write this. You forged it. Prove it, David said simply. That was the moment I understood. They had planned this. While I was in Paris, studying and dreaming and believing I had a future with Hartwell Textiles, they had been plotting to steal my inheritance. They'd waited until Father was weak and sick, then somehow gotten him to sign a new will. Or maybe they'd forged it entirely. Either way, I was out. Cut off. Discarded like an old dress that no longer fit. I could fight this, I said. You could try, Mother replied. But legal battles are expensive. And you have $100,000. We have $50 million. The message was clear. I could spend my entire inheritance on lawyers and still lose. They held all the cards. Besides, David added, think of the scandal. The adopted daughter claiming she deserves an equal share of the fortune. The press would have a field day. He was right. The Hartwell name carried weight in New York society. A public fight would destroy my reputation along with any hope of building my own career. So what do you want me to do? Take the money, Mother said. Start over somewhere else. Build your own life. And never come back? You're always welcome for holidays, she said, but we both knew she was lying. I folded the will carefully and put it in my purse. I'll need time to think about this. Of course, David said. Take all the time you need. But his tone suggested my time was already up. I left the lawyer's office in a daze, walking through Manhattan like a ghost. Everything looked the same, but I felt like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The doorman at our building nodded respectfully, not knowing I was no longer the heir to anything. The shops I'd grown up visiting, the restaurants where I'd celebrated birthdays, the entire world I'd taken for granted suddenly felt foreign. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom surrounded by memories that now felt like lies. Photos of family vacations, awards from school, birthday cards from parents who weren't really my parents. Everything I'd built my identity on was fake. I called my best friend Sarah in Paris. But how do you explain that your entire life has been revealed as a lie? How do you tell someone that your family has betrayed you in the most fundamental way possible? Come back to Paris, Sarah said when I finally managed to tell her some of it. You have friends here. Your professors love your work. You can start your fashion house like you planned. With what money? I have $100,000. That's not enough to start a company. It's enough to survive while you figure out the rest. Maybe she was right. Maybe I should just take the money and run. Except that I'd been naive to believe in fairy tales about family loyalty and unconditional love. But every time I looked at that will, I felt sick. Not just because of what I'd lost, but because of what they'd done. Father had loved me. I knew he had. The man who'd called me every week, who'd been so proud of my designs, who'd promised to help me start my own company, would never have cut me out of his will. They'd stolen more than my inheritance. They'd stolen my father's final wishes. I spent 3 days in that house watching David and Mother go about their lives like nothing had changed. David was already making plans to expand the business, talking about new markets and manufacturing partnerships. Mother was redecorating the living room, erasing the last traces of Father's presence. Neither of them seemed to feel any guilt about what they'd done to me. On the 4th day I made my decision. I packed a single suitcase and left the house before dawn. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I just disappeared like they wanted me to. But I didn't go back to Paris. Instead, I went to a small town in Vermont, where no one knew the Hartwell name and no one cared about my pedigree. I rented a tiny apartment above a coffee shop and started over. The first year was hell. I'd never been poor before, never had to worry about rent or groceries or whether I could afford to fix my car. The $100,000 seemed like a lot until I started actually living on it. Without a trust fund or family connections, I had to learn to survive on my own. I got a job at a local boutique, selling clothes to tourists and locals. It was humbling work for someone who'd grown up expecting to inherit a textile empire, but I learned things there that all my expensive education hadn't taught me. I learned about real customers, about what people actually wanted to wear, about the difference between fashion and style. At night, I worked on my designs. I couldn't afford expensive materials or professional equipment, so I got creative. I haunted thrift stores and estate sales, finding vintage fabrics and reimagining them into something new. I turned old curtains into evening gowns, transformed men's suits into women's blazers, made art from discarded materials. My first sale was to a woman from New York who'd come to Vermont for a wedding. She saw a dress I'd made from old silk scarves and offered me $300 for it on the spot. It was more money than I'd made in a week at the boutique. "You should be selling these in the city," she told me. "This is better than anything I've seen in Soho." That's when I realized something. I didn't need my family's money or connections. I had something they didn't have: actual talent. I started selling my designs online under the name LC Designs. I couldn't use my real name because I didn't want David or Mother to find me, but I also didn't want to hide completely. Linda Peter. My initials, but a different last name. A new identity for my new life. The business grew slowly at first. A few sales here and there, mostly to people who appreciated unique handmade pieces. But word spread. Fashion bloggers started featuring my work. Small boutiques began carrying my designs. Within 2 years, I was making enough to quit my job at the boutique and focus on LC Designs full-time. By year 3, I had a small team of seamstresses working for me. We'd outgrown my apartment and moved into a proper studio space. I was shipping clothes across the country, building a reputation for innovative designs and sustainable practices. Year 4 brought my first major breakthrough. A celebrity wore one of my dresses to a film premiere, and suddenly everyone wanted to know who LC was. Orders poured in faster than I could fill them. I opened a flagship store in Burlington, then another in Boston. But I never forgot who I really was or what had been taken from me. I kept tabs on my family through industry publications and social media. Hartwell Textiles was struggling. David had expanded too quickly, taking on debt to finance new factories and distribution deals. The fashion industry was changing, moving toward fast fashion and overseas manufacturing, and the company was too slow to adapt. Mother had remarried to a man 20 years younger who was obviously after her money. She looked older in the photos, harder somehow. The woman who'd once been the toast of New York society was now just another wealthy widow with a boy toy husband. David had gotten married too, to a senator's daughter who brought political connections but no real business sense. They lived in the Hamptons house that should have been mine, throwing parties for people who were already starting to whisper about the company's financial troubles. It gave me no pleasure to watch them struggle. I'd built something beautiful and successful, something that was entirely mine. Their failures couldn't add to my happiness, but they could create an opportunity. By year 5, Hartwell Textiles was in serious trouble. The company was hemorrhaging money, losing major clients to competitors who could offer better prices and faster delivery. David had mortgaged everything to keep the business afloat, but it wasn't enough. That's when I made my move. I'd been building LC Designs into more than just a fashion house. I'd quietly acquired several smaller textile companies, building a network of suppliers and manufacturers. I had cash reserves, industry connections, and most importantly, I had patience. When Hartwell Textiles went up for sale, I was ready. I created a shell company called Phoenix Acquisitions, named after the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes. Through a series of intermediaries and legal arrangements, I made an offer to buy Hartwell Textiles for $30 million. It was a low offer, but the family was desperate. They'd already turned down higher offers from competitors who wanted to gut the company for parts. Phoenix Acquisitions promised to keep the Hartwell name and maintain the existing workforce. The irony was perfect. I was offering to save the company they'd stolen from me. David flew to Boston to meet with Phoenix Acquisitions representatives. He had no idea he was selling his birthright to the sister he'd betrayed. I watched the meeting through security cameras, sitting in my office in Burlington while my lawyers handled the negotiations. David looked older, more tired than I remembered. The stress of running a failing company had aged him badly. "The offer is fair," my lead attorney said. "But Phoenix Acquisitions has some conditions." "What conditions?" "The current management team will remain in place for a transition period. All existing employees will keep their jobs. And the Hartwell family will continue to be involved in the business." David looked relieved. "That's more than generous. There's one more thing. Phoenix Acquisitions insists on complete transparency. Full access to all financial records, all business documents, all corporate communications. They want to understand exactly how the company got into this situation. Of course, we have nothing to hide." That made me smile. They had plenty to hide, but they'd learn that soon enough. The sale went through in 60 days. Phoenix Acquisitions became the new owner of Hartwell Textiles, with David staying on as CEO and Mother keeping her position on the board of directors. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd managed to save the family business and maintain their positions of power. They had no idea that I now owned everything they'd ever cared about. The first few months were quiet. I let them think they were still in control while my people conducted a thorough audit of the company's operations. What we found was worse than I'd expected. David hadn't just been incompetent. He'd been stealing. For years he'd been siphoning money from the company into personal accounts. Fake consulting fees, inflated expense reports, phantom employees who existed only on paper. He'd stolen over $2 million from the business that was supposed to be his inheritance. Mother had been complicit, using her position on the board to approve David's schemes. They'd been looting the company while Father was dying, then after his death, then right up until the day they sold it to me. I had them. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November. David and Mother were called to the Hartwell Textiles headquarters for a routine meeting with the new ownership. They had no idea what was waiting for them. I arrived early, taking the elevator to the top floor of the building my grandfather had built. The executive conference room hadn't changed much since I was a child. Same mahogany table, same oil paintings of Hartwell ancestors, same view of Manhattan that had made me feel like I was on top of the world. Today I actually was. David arrived first, looking confused when he saw me sitting at the head of the table. "Excuse me," he said to the secretary who'd brought him in. "I think there's been a mistake. I'm here for the Phoenix Acquisitions meeting." "There's no mistake," I said quietly. He looked at me more closely and I watched recognition dawn in his eyes. "Linda." "Hello, David. What are you doing here? How did you get in here?" "I own the building now. I can go wherever I want. The color drained from his face. You can't be serious. Phoenix Acquisitions. LC Designs. Linda Peter. Did you really think I'd just disappear forever? Mother walked in then, stopping dead when she saw me. Linda? What's going on? Please sit down, I said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. We have a lot to discuss. They sat, both looking like they'd seen a ghost. In a way they had. I suppose you're wondering how I managed to buy your company, I said, opening a folder full of documents. It's quite a story, actually. It starts with a girl who lost everything because her family betrayed her. A girl who had to learn to survive on her own, to build something from nothing, to become strong enough to take back what was stolen from her. You bought the company? David's voice was barely a whisper. I bought everything. The business, the buildings, the equipment, the intellectual property. Even the Hartwell name. It all belongs to me now. That's impossible. Phoenix Acquisitions is my company. Has been from the beginning. Congratulations, you just sold your birthright to the sister you threw away. Mother found her voice. What do you want? Justice. Answers. Maybe a little bit of revenge. I pulled out a thick stack of papers. These are the results of our financial audit. Makes for interesting reading. $2.3 million in fraudulent charges over the past 8 years. Money stolen from the company that you were supposed to be protecting. David's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Consulting fees paid to companies that don't exist. Expense reports for trips you never took. Salaries for employees who were never hired. Should I go on? You can't prove anything. Can't I? I pulled out another document. Bank records. Transaction histories. Signed authorizations with your signature. Mother's signature approving the board resolutions. I can prove everything. What do you want? Mother asked again. I want you to understand what you did to me. I want you to feel what I felt when I realized the people I trusted most in the world had betrayed me. We gave you money. We didn't leave you with nothing. You stole my inheritance. You forged Father's will. You threw me away like garbage. We did what we had to do to protect the family legacy. Whose family? I'm not family, remember? I'm just some adopted girl who didn't deserve what you gave her. David leaned forward. Linda, please. We can work this out. We can make this right. Can you give me back the 5 years I spent building a life from nothing? Can you give me back the father I never got to say goodbye to? Can you give me back the trust one had in the people who raised me? We're sorry, Mother said. We were wrong. We made mistakes. Mistakes. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was calculated. Premeditated. You planned to destroy me and you almost succeeded. So what happens now? David asked. Now you have a choice. You can resign from the company and walk away quietly, or you can stay and work for me. Under my terms, under my rules. What terms? You'll both take a 90% pay cut. You'll work in entry-level positions with no authority and no decision-making power. You'll be watched constantly, and any hint of dishonesty will result in immediate termination and criminal prosecution. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You stole from this company, from the employees who trusted you, from the legacy Father built. This is your chance to make amends. And if we refuse? Then you'll be prosecuted for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. With the evidence I have, you'll both go to prison. The room was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. The same clock that had marked time during family dinners when I was a child, when I believed we were a real family with real love between us. I need time to think, David said finally. You have until tomorrow morning. Make your choice. As they stood to leave, Mother turned back to me. Linda, I know you hate us. But we did love you. We still do. Do you? Because I'm having trouble seeing the difference between your love and your hatred. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, looking out at the city where I'd grown up. Somewhere out there was the apartment where I'd spent my childhood, the schools where I'd learned to dream, the grave where my father was buried. I'd won. I'd gotten my revenge, taken back what was stolen from me, proven that I was stronger than the people who'd tried to break me. So why did I feel so empty? The next morning, David and Mother both submitted their resignations. They chose exile over humiliation, pride over penance. Within a week, they'd both left New York. David moved to California, where he got a job as a middle manager at a small manufacturing company. Mother moved to Florida with her young husband, who divorced her 6 months later when he realized her money was mostly gone. I kept Hartwell Textiles running, but I transformed it. We pivoted to sustainable fashion, ethical manufacturing, fair labor practices. Everything the company should have been if David had cared more about the business than his own bank account. LC Designs merged with Hartwell Textiles, creating a fashion empire that stretched from New York to Paris to Tokyo. I'd built something bigger and better than anything my family had ever dreamed of. But success, I learned, is a lonely thing when you have no one to share it with. 5 years later, I was walking through Central Park when I saw him. David, looking older and more tired, sitting on a bench feeding pigeons. He'd gained weight, lost most of his hair, and was wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit properly. He looked up as I approached, and for a moment, I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Genuine remorse. "Hello, Linda." "David. You look good. Success suits you." "Thank you." We sat in awkward silence, watching the pigeons fight over breadcrumbs. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "For everything. For what we did to you, for what we stole from you. For the way we treated you. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" "Both, I suppose. But mostly sorry I did it. I was angry about Father's will, about the idea of sharing what I thought was mine. I convinced myself you didn't deserve it because you weren't really family. But the truth is, you were more family than I ever was." "What do you mean?" "You loved him. Really loved him. Not his money or his status or what he could give you. Just him. I never had that with him. I was always trying to prove myself, always competing for his attention. But you just loved him." "I did love him. He loved you too. More than he ever loved me, I think. That's why I was so threatened by you. So you destroyed me." "I tried to. And I'm sorry." I looked at my brother, this broken man who'd once had everything and thrown it away out of jealousy and greed. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Dad, I just felt tired. "I have something for you," I said, pulling an envelope from my purse. "It's a copy of Father's real will. The one he wrote before he got sick." David took the envelope with shaking hands. "His real will. I found it in his personal papers when I took over the company. It was hidden in his desk, probably where he put it for safekeeping." "What does it say?" "Read it." David opened the envelope and read in silence. I watched his face crumble as he realized what the document contained. "He left everything to you," he whispered. "The company, the houses, everything. I was supposed to get a trust fund and a job in the business if I wanted it." "Yes." He knew. He knew I wasn't ready to run the company. He knew you were the one with the vision and the talent." "I think so. And I stole it from you. I stole your birthright and gave it to myself." "You did." David looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "How can you ever forgive me?" "I don't know if I can. But I'm trying." "Why?" "Because carrying all this anger is exhausting. Because Father wouldn't want us to hate each other forever. Because maybe it's time to stop being the person who was hurt and start being the person who heals." David nodded, understanding. "I have a proposition for you," I said. "Come back to New York. Come back to the company. Not as CEO, not as an owner, but as my brother. Help me build something Father would be proud of. You trust me again? After everything. I'd give you a chance to earn back my trust. It would take time and you'd have to prove yourself every day. But yes, I'd give you that chance." "Why?" "Because despite everything, we're still family. Not by blood, but by choice. And maybe it's time to choose each other again." David stood up, wiping his eyes. "I don't deserve this." "No, you don't. But I'm offering it anyway. I accept." Whatever terms you want, whatever position you have for me, I accept. Good. Come by the office tomorrow. We'll figure out where you fit. As he walked away, I stayed on the bench, watching the sun set over the park. My name is Linda Peter and I am 33 years old. I own a fashion empire, live in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But more importantly, I've learned that revenge might fill the empty spaces in your heart temporarily, but forgiveness is what actually heals them. Sometimes the best revenge is not becoming the person who hurt you. Sometimes it's becoming someone better than you ever thought possible. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's giving someone else the chance to become better too.